Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this virtual meeting of the South West Wales Corporate Joint Committee Overview and Scrutiny Subcommittee. Please ensure that your phones are switched to silent for the duration of the meeting. In addition, when asked to raise your hand, could you make sure you use your electronic hand to do so? Thank you. So that's item 1. And item 2, Chair's announcements. You'll be pleased to know I have no announcements. Item 3, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? If members have declarations in relation to any reports on today's agenda, can you please indicate now? Charlotte will email you a copy of the declaration form for you to complete and return. Can't see any hands raised, so we can move on to item 4. So item 4 is the minutes of the previous meeting. The minutes of the 27th January 2023 are before us today for accuracy. Do any members have any comments? No. Okay. Can I please have a proposer and a seconder for the minutes?
I propose, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Bowen, and thank you, Councillor John, seconded as well. Can we have? Do we need to raise hands then to pass them?
Just to check if anyone's got any abstentions, and if not, if anyone's against, then we can take it that it's read, Chair.
Okay, no abstentions and no any abstentions. No. Anyone against? No. Okay, that's done then. So the minutes are approved. Thank you. Okay, so we're on to agenda item 5, the draft corporate plan 2023 to 2028. We have Owen Enoch, who will provide an overview and a presentation of the draft corporate plan for 2023 to 28. I'll now hand over to Owen before taking questions from members.
Diolch yn fawr, Cadeirydd. So na I rhannu'n screen I nawr, yn gyflym. Byddai ddim spel gyda'r cyflwyniad, cadw fe'n eitha byr. Wel, diolch I chi am roi'r cyfle I mi drafod y cynllun corfforaethol gyda chi yma heddiw. Yn enw I Owain, a dwi'n gweithio I Cyngor Sir Gar, ond dwi'n gweithio'r benna ar prosiectau cydbwyllgor corfforaethol. Felly, tymed bach o gyflwyniad o cefndir o beth yw'r cydbwyllgor corfforaethol. Wrth gwrs, I chi gyd yn gwybod erbyn nawr, ond rhyw fath o gyd-destun mwy na dim. A mwy na dim, pan ni wedi bwrw ymlaen a paratoi'r cynllun corfforaethol. Wel, yn gryno, mae'n ymrwymiad neu disgwyliad statudol yn bod yn wneud hyn. Felly, wrth gwrs yr angen I osod amcanion llesiant. Maen nhw'n rhoi rhywbeth I ni anelu ati o ran y cydbwyllgor. Mae'n rhoi rhywbeth I ni geisio gyflawni. Ac wrth gwrs mae'n rhoi mesur o le ni'n gweld yn cyfraniad ni fel cydbwyllgor wrth symud ymlaen yng nghyd-destun Diolch-Lemwyn Cymru. Mae'r cyfeiriad nad adolygiad tirwedd o ran Chwilio Cymru, so mae Chwilio Cymru wedi wneud rhyw fath o yn y broses o edrych ar y sector yn gyffredinol a gweld siwr mae cydbwyllgor corfforaethol yn setlo mewn, really, a bwrw ati o ran ei gwaith. A un o'r elfennau, wrth gwrs, cynnar ym mywyd y cydbwyllgor yw I dod i'r fframwaith strategol yna mewn lle. A wrth gwrs, rhan o hwnna yw I ymlaethu a ceisio gydgysylltu o ran yn amcanion llesiant ni, a hefyd pethau fel ein weledigaeth ni, a fel I ni'n mynd I mesur ein perfformiad. Felly, rhoddodd y cydbwyllgor corfforaethol cymeradwyaeth I ni baratoi ac I ymgynghori ar y cynllun corfforaethol drafft. Yn dealltwriaeth I, ni yw'r cydbwyllgor corfforaethol gyntaf yng Nghymru I gynhyrchu cynllun corfforaethol, wrth gwrs mewn ffurf drafft. A bydd yn ffurf drafft, wrth gwrs, tan I bod yn cael, neu os mae'n cael ei gymeradwyo gyda'r cydbwyllgor corfforaethol ei hun. So, yn fyr, dim pwrpas heddi yw fynd trwyddo cynnwys y peth yn fanylder. Mae hwnna wrth gwrs ar gael I chi a byddai'n digon hapus I ateb cwestiynau ar hynny. Ond beth ni wedi trial wneud, wel ni wedi trial cyfnodi yn cynnydd hyd yn hyn. So gwaith sydd wedi cael ei wneud o ran dod i'r cydbwyllgor corfforaethol yn ei lle. So elfennau'n cyfysoddiadol na, statudol ac yn y blaen, dod i'r peth at ei gilydd rili yn y dyddiau cynta. Ond eto fel wedys yn flaenorol i geisio edrych ymlaen nawr ac i fod yn uchelgeisiol, wrth gwrs wrth gofio y pwerau a dyletswyddau penodol sydd gyda'r cydbwyllgor corfforaethol. Yr erfen arall i gofio yw dyletswyddau sector gyhoeddus, so ni'n rhan o'r teulu llywodraeth leol, so yn debyg iawn i'r cyngorau, mae gyda ni ymrwymiadau dyletswyddau sector gyhoeddus hefyd i feddwl amdani. So welwch chi pethau fel egwyddorion mewn hyn o beth, amcan cydraddoldeb ac yn y blaen. So crynodeb cyflym o'r cynnwys cadeirydd ac aelodau. So cyflwyno'r cyd-destun. Wrth gwrs mae amryw o bolisïau mewn lle a strategaethau ni wedi ceisio ymelaethu arni. Ni wedi cynnig gweledigaeth. Fel wedys i y nodau amcanion sydd wedi ymrwymo o fewn cyd-destun y pwerau sydd gyda ni. So wrth gwrs maen nhw'n siarad am materion megis trafnidiaeth, llesiant economaidd, ynni a cynllunio datblygu. Ond mae hwnna'n adlewyrchu ffaith na'r pwerau a'r ymrwymiadau sydd arno ni. Ni wedi cynnig amcan cydraddoldeb, a wedyn yr agweddau llywodraethol a gweithredol. A mewn hynny, wrth gwrs, allwch chi weld shwd mae pethau'n gweithio yn gyfodsiddiadol o fewn y cydbwyllgor corfforaethol, a hefyd fel ni'n mynd i mesur yn perfformiad, neu fel ni'n cynnig mesur yn perfformiad wrth symud ymlaen. So eto, mae'n rhoi cyfle i ni wedi penderfynu, a fi'n credu yn lle creu gyfres o cynlluniau ar wahân, megis cynllun by ymrywiaeth, ni wedi ceisio dod i popeth mewn yn y cynllun corfforaethol yma, fel dechreuad integredig, rili. Credu bod hwnna'n ffordd dylwys wrth symud ymlaen, oedd y cydbwyllgor corfforaethol yn hapus â hynny. Fi wedi twtsio'r mesur perfformiad, a wedyn wrth gwrs gweithredu camau gamserlen mesuriau effaith. So fel ni'n mynd i wybod beth ni'n mynd i cyflawni a phryd, ac wrth gwrs ni'n rhoi cyfeiriad wedyn at y ffaith bod yn cyllideb ni am y flwyddyn i ddod wedi gymeradwyo. Fi'n ymwybodol gaethoch chi fel pwyllgor cyflwyniad neu papur ar y gyllideb yn flaenorol, a felly mae hwnna yn cael ei adlewyrchu yn y cynllun. O ran yr ymgynghoriad, so ymgynghorio'r 6 wythnos, so mae wedi bod, ni siŵr o fod wedi hanner ffordd trwyddo falle ar hyn o bryd. I gyd fynd yr cynllun i hunan, mae gyda ti yr asesiad effaith integredig a ferswn hawddau ddeall a cynllun a dudalen. So ni'n trial bod y mor gynhwysfawr a ni gallu o ran y deunydd hefyd. Coddisrwydd, codi ymwybyddiaeth, so ni wedi ysgrifennu allan i y Public Service Boards, enghraifft. Ni wedi cael adlewyrchiad ar tudalennau we ac yngorau ei hun. So mae hwnna'n mynd i fod yn challenge, mae'r cydbwyllgor corfforaethol yn rhywbeth newydd, ond i meithrin dealltwriaeth o beth yw'r cydbwyllgor a beth yw'r cynllun a beth bydd y gwaith yn symud ymlaen. Wrth gwrs, mae hwnna'n mynd i fod yn challenge, ond ni wedi enyn a defnyddio'r cysylltiadau sydd gyda ni, rili. A'r bwriad wedyn yw unrhyw sylwadau dderbenydd cael ei ystyried, a bydd ni'n bwrw ymlaen yn mynd ar unrhyw argymhelliad o ran newid neu diwygio'r cynllun drafft nôl i'r cydbwyllgor corfforaethol ei hun yn ei gyfarfod nesaf ar diwedd mis Mawrth. Mae'r dyddiad fyna ydych chi ar y sgrin. Felly, dyna'r cyd-destun o ran yr ymgynghoriad. Am cwpl o syniadau rhain, rili, o ran ystyriaethau craffu wrth nodi wrth gwrs rôl y pwyllgor yma wrth symud ymlaen. Wel, mae'r angen i paratoi'r adroddiadau blynyddol yn cael ei mewn lle yn hyn o beth. Yn wedig o ran y cynnydd i ni wneud o ran cyflawni'r amcanion llesiant, so bydd rhaid i ni wneud hwnna fel mae cyngorau yn goffa wneud. Hefyd falle rhyw fath o adolygiad ar y graddau ar rôl mae'r cynllun yn chwarae nawr yn y penderfyniadau polisi, cyllidol ac yn y blaen wrth symud ymlaen. So rili dyle hwn fod yn egwyddor trefnu ganolog i'r penderfyniadau. So oedd eisiau strategaeth canolog gyda'r cydbwyllgor i bwyso'r y mesur y syniadau. A felly welwch chi bod ni'n dechrau, wrth gwrs gan adlewyrchu'r ffaith bod y cynllun a'r amcanion yn ffurf drafft, ond felly welwch chi nawr gyda'r adroddiadau sydd gyda chi bod ni'n dechrau neu cyfeiriad i'r cynllun corfforaethol yn ein penderfyniadau. So mae hwnna'n rhoi rhyw fath o gyd-destun a pwyslais strategol i fel i ni'n gwneud yn penderfyniadau neu yr aelodau yn gwneud y penderfyniadau o ran materion o bolisi. A dyna diwedd y cyflwyniad cadeirydd. Fi gobeithio bod hwnna wedi bod o fydd. Eto, dim o bwriad oedd fynd trwyddo bob dudalen o'r cynllun. Ceisio roi ryw fath o gyd-destun i chi. Ond fi gobeithio bod hwnna o fydd fel wedes i, a hapus i ateb unrhyw gwestiynau. Diolch yn fawr.
Diolch yn fawr iawn, Owain. Mae'n a very interesting report, and the plan itself as well. Before I move to questions from members, I would remind everyone this isn't your opportunity to feed into the consultation of the corporate plan and welcome any suggestions. One that I know will come up, Owain, from a pre-meeting is having the report in the information pack as opposed to having a link to the report as a PDF. It was a step away from members by being in a link, and if we could have it in the report, please, in the future, that would be very helpful. Diolch yn fawr. But notwithstanding, I'll go around and I'll take questions now as they are in order on my screen. So, Councillor Davis, you're first on my screen.
Ond yn gofyn, faint o ymateb sydd wedi bod i'r ymgynghoriad tan nawr?
Diolch. Wel, byddwn ni'n gweud bod ymateb ges i'r adroddiad i rhedeg dechrau'r wsnos, so mae'r ymateb yn weddol oesiol o ran niferoedd. Roedd y cynnwys ar awgymradau weles i yn ddiddorol. Ond fi'n credu byddwn ni'n gwerthfawrogi a ennyn y cyfle i ofyn i chi heddi falle i godi ymwybyddiaeth os yn bosib o'r ymgynghoriad. Fi'n gwybod mae'n dyddiau cynnar i'r cydbwyllgor a fi'n credu bod mae gymaint o ymgynghoriadau mynd mlaen falle o ran materion cyllidebol o ran y cyngorau eu hunan, ond yn y 20au ar hyn o bryd, so byddwn ni'n gobeithio am rhagor, ond eto roedd y sylwadau ni wedi cael yn ddefnyddiol. So, dyna'r ffigwr fi'n credu weles i dydd Mawrth falle.
Diolch yn fawr, diolch.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Howlett, you're next on my screen.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, yes, I was going to ask about the consultation response. Interesting to know that it's just in the 20s. I have to say, obviously, new to this committee, as the majority of us are, and I wasn't able to attend the last committee. I am skeptical about the value of the whole concept, I have to say. You know, we've got when you look around the virtual room today, we've got a lot of senior officers here. And I'd be very interested as we move forward to see what value is this going to add. You know, I think all councils have reports and coming at them from all angles, and this whole process is just something that I think I may be wrong, and let's hope I am wrong. You know, that this is similar. But as I often say, we are where we are, and I'd rather be in the room here than out of the room. But I'm going to be looking carefully to see what value this gives to all the councils that are involved. And I think the number of consultation responses we've just heard of doesn't really give a huge amount of confidence in terms of where the engagement from the big population bases that we've got in the 4 councils. And as I say, I'm just going to be interested to track the progress to see if this gives value to the money to the taxpayer that ultimately is paying for this whole concept. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Howlett. Yes, we did discuss that in the last meeting at some length. So if you have an opportunity to watch the recording, and that might be quite helpful, because that was raised by members of this group last time. I don't think there's anything else to add there, Owain. Okay, so Councillor John, you're next on my screen.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the consultation. I mean, I raised issues around that last time. I mean, I mentioned we got the Public Service Board consultation, County Council consultations. This consultation it's difficult to get the public interested. Just to let you know, Owen, I got a community council meeting tonight, and this is one of the items on my report. Just let people know there is a consultation there. Whether it makes any more people respond, I don't know, but yeah, a concern about that. One of the big issues, and we raised this at the PSB meeting with our partnership panel and also the county council one, the aspirations are great when you see what bodies want to do, but it's all about the delivery and how you actually what comes of them. So having an annual plan will be good to see what's happened over the last 12 months. So I would. I'd welcome that, but the question I would ask really is if we're having an annual plan, and we heard last time that this joint committee is planning a do minimum plan over the next 12 months because of budgets and not wanting to spend much money. What are we hoping to see in an annual plan if the process at the moment is we're doing minimum in delivery because we can't really afford to do much? And again, the question really is this as well of or alongside local councils, because a lot of the things I look in the report and the next report are things which councils are already doing now, and they're projects which councils have been working towards and delivering, and all of a sudden now they're putting this joint plan. Supposedly people outside may think, well, it's this joint committee have caused these to happen. Well, they've happened because councils have been doing them anyway. So I wonder about that. Just one comment really. I went through the report over the weekend and I saw the plan on the page. I saw the plan on the page was very welcome in summarising it and trying to make people aware of what was there. So just some comments, a question really about what we hope to achieve with a do minimum budget for the next 12 months. Thank you.
Okay, Owain, do you want to come back?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair, and thanks for the question, Councillor. Yes, I'd agree. You know, if you're going to set a plan, it's important to be aspirational, but it's important that it's specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time bound, and it's got to be deliverable. Hence why we've or the CJC is proposing that the actual well-being objectives are aligned very much to the powers and duties that it has. But one of the sections that perhaps I'd like to draw your attention to in the plan are the action steps measures. So albeit they're in the appendices, they're actually quite very important in terms of supporting those well-being objectives, clarifying how they're going to be delivered. And what I will say as well is obviously the corporate plan's in draft form at the moment. There may well be an exercise or an opportunity now to review particularly those appendices in light of the budget which has been approved next year, and to try and develop a specific set of targets or outputs that we'd like to achieve perhaps over the short term, bearing in mind obviously the plan looks to the long term, but yeah, we work within the confines of the budget that's been provided. But that's what I'd like to answer that question, or certainly make reference to those appendices. But the annual reports, yeah, we have to obviously look at how the well-being objectives are performing, and I'd agree that does give us an opportunity to review and revisit.
Yeah, thank you. Just to reiterate, yeah, I welcome the annual review. I think that is necessary. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor John. Okay, Councillor Black.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've got two basic questions. The first one is in relation to the consultation. I listened to the description of the mechanics of the consultation. It just seems to me that we're consulting councils but not consulting the public. I just don't. I mean, I'm not surprised you've had such a low response rate, because the first I knew about this consultation was a few minutes ago, and I actually look at the council website quite regularly. So I think we do need to find, if we're going to get a decent consultation response to this, we do need to widen out that consultation. You know, maybe there's a whole lot of ways you could do that. Social media, you could use local libraries to put posters and stuff in local libraries. You could, you know, there's quite a lot of schools. You know, there's a whole range of things which you can do to actually widen out this consultation to get a better response. So I think that would be quite useful if you were able to do that, because you might get a much greater response to the consultation. I have the same criticism of our PSB, because they just consulted on their plan and they've had 130 responses in Swansea, and same thing again. They took it away on websites. Nobody knows about it. Nobody knows to look for it, and they never get replies. And that seems to me to be a major problem with all these corporate plans. So that's my first point. The second point is the framework, the measuring performance framework. I'm looking at pages 41 and 42 of the corporate plan, which seems quite vague. I noticed the appendices, that there's much more detail in the appendices. My concern is that the periods of measurement are quite long. I mean, I think you've got one here, 2030 to 30, 24 to 28, 2030 to 35. It's very difficult to carry out, to actually measure on or even a month by month basis how much progress is being made with timescales of that length. So I think when you actually come to hone this and turn it into an actual action plan, we do need to have some landmarks where we can say how we're doing and whether we're actually meeting each particular performance measure at a particular stage, so that we can actually scrutinize this plan properly. That's just my thoughts on the plan, which I've been reading the last half hour. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Black. Thank you very much. Thank you, Owain. I thought it was notable that we're the first CJC to get to this position to have a draft corporate plan in place, and that's congratulations to the officers involved with that. I agree with members, though, about having some specific targets. I think hopefully the annual reports will be an important part of that, and also have to agree that the councils in this area have already got strong relationships working together, and hopefully this is just going to help cement that and rather than replace it. But thank you very much. I don't think there are any other questions from members.
I can't see any, Chair.
Okay, so thank you for I think that's a useful discussion, and we're going to note this item then. Do we need to?
Chair, yeah, no, it's just for noting. There's the recommendations are there, and the majority are for noting. The last one is just to make note that we will be having annual reports going forward, so we'll make sure they're on our forward work programme.
Okay, thank you.
Can I ask, Chair, will there be a formal reporting back mechanism by way of a letter or report to take account of the comments that have been made on this, which can go formally to the CJC?
What we can do is with the minutes, I can make sure that that's included within the consultation. I know Owain is here, obviously I'm making note as well of the questions, but I can use the minutes as a formal response to the consultation if members are happy with that. And
the minutes will be going to the CJC to look at them, will they? Will that be circulated to them?
Owen, I'm not sure how the consultation, I'm presuming it would be included within the consultation response and the CJC would see them at that point, is it? I'm not sure whether Craig would want to come in at this point.
I was just going to say Craig's got his hand up. Craig, would you like to come in?
Yes, Councillor Black, that's absolutely correct. So what we can do is obviously record the responses ultimately being made today as part of a formal response to the consultation. That was the reason ultimately for bringing it here today, and it can make sure then that flows then into the CJC, so they've had an opportunity to consider the views of the Scrutiny Committee as well.
And can I ask, on the other items on this agenda, if we have queries or criticisms, will they be fed back formally by way of letter or minute to the CJC?
That's absolutely fine. Yeah, one of the elements you can consider as a Scrutiny Committee is that the chair writes to representatives of the CJC just to highlight these particular issues.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Black, and thank you, Craig. I think we can move on to item 6 then, which is the South West Wales Economic Delivery Plan. Jason Jones will provide an overview of the report. So and then we'll have questions from members after Jason's done that. So is Jason here?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Oh, hi, Jason. Sorry, I didn't see you on screen.
That's fine. I've only just turned my camera on, Chair. So first, I'm going to apologise. My camera's playing up and seems to be zooming in and out. In my last meeting, the person said I was making them feel drunk. So I hope I don't have that effect on you members this afternoon. But I'm just going to give a short overview similar to that provided by Owain. So you've got the report in front of you. Effectively, it's an update on progress made to date in terms of delivering on the South West Wales Regional Economic Development Plan. Members will be aware that this plan was endorsed as the regional strategy for the economic wellbeing strand of the CJC work programme back in March 2022. So the REDP, Regional Economic Development Plan, is attached to Appendix A. Effectively, it sets out 3 ambitions which will give the makeup of our economy moving forward. And the 3 ambitions are resilient and sustainable, enterprising and ambitious, balanced and inclusive. To support the delivery of those ambitions and guide activity moving forward, the 3 missions are leading, or the leader in renewable energy and net zero economy, strong, resilient, embedded business space, growing and sustaining the experience offer. So progress against these projects and programs is set out at Appendix B of the papers. And there's a whole raft of individual projects supporting those ambitions and missions, and they're set out by individual authority and Swansea Bay City Deal activities attached at Appendix C. So I'm just really quickly going to run through the key overarching economic programs for the region, many of which, if not all, you'll be familiar with. So the first one in the report is the UK Government Levelling Up Fund, and I'm pleased to say that all 4 authorities have benefited from this funding support, whether it be from the previous round 1 application or the more recent round 2. And as a region, we've captured just in excess of £92 million worth of funding, and that represents about 28% of the funding allocated to Wales. Aligned to levelling up, we've got the UK Government Shared Prosperity Fund, which is, of course, a strand of the levelling up approach. And within the region, there's just shy of £132 million that's been allocated to South West Wales. The report identifies how we will be allocating the funding in terms of anchor projects, standalone and commissioned projects, and the anchor projects are aligned to the UK Government Shared Prosperity themes of communities and pace, supporting local businesses, people and skills and multiplying. We've also got Welsh Government funding supporting regeneration activity in the region, and that comes in the form of their Transforming Towns, which previously was, for some of you, TRI and Vibrant and Vital Places. So over the 3-year period up until year 24-25, so up until effectively end of March 25, there's £27 million of funding that's available in the region, and that's being allocated under 3 themes: placemaking grants, which are a smaller, below £250,000 funding; larger strategic projects, many of which are identified in the Appendix B schedule; and a town centre loan fund. The other the next programme in the report is the Celtic Freeport bid, which has been submitted, joint bid with Pembrokeshire and Neath Port Talbot. Can see some nodding heads, you're familiar. We wait with anticipation. I understood, not being closely involved, but I understood that a decision may have been forthcoming by the end of this month. I think it's now early mid-March. Significant inward investment, very much aligned to the green energy net zero theme, the mission, and it's expected to support over 16,000 jobs and up to 5.5 billion of new investment in the region. Swansea Bay City deal activity, and I'm sure you're all familiar with what's happening on your patch. It's in the 5th year now. All 9 projects and programmes are in development, and it's anticipated by 2033 to bring forward a total investment, so that's public and private, in the region of 1.3 billion. As I say, Appendix C lists or provides an update on activity under that theme. Regional energy strategy, again, the regional strategy was endorsed at the same meeting as the Regional Economic Development Plan, 15th of March, very much aligned with supporting the economic well-being theme in terms of the renewable energy, net zero economy emissions, number of major projects being progressed, mentioned the Celtic Freeport, Blue Eden Tidal Lagoon, number of Swansea Bay City deals, and a number of the local projects identified in the Appendix B schedule. The report, and this is a really important point, whilst I'm providing an update this afternoon on the economic well-being function, there's clear synergy with the other 2 functions in terms of transport, regional land use planning functions. So if we don't get the infrastructure right and or the allocations of land to be able to come forward, etc., we're not going to maximise the opportunities. The chair made a comment earlier, and I'll vouch for that. We've got very, very mature and long-established ways of working in this region, and I should have introduced myself as representing the Regeneration Regional Directors this afternoon. So that's a group that's long been established. Before my time, were involved and heavily influenced the establishment of the Swansea Bay City Deal programme. So I think that's important to mention. It's also important to just reinforce the point that Councillor Howlett made, that I have to be upfront, and it is in the report, that the activity that I've given a quick whistle-stop tour on and the schedules, all of this activity would have been happening and is happening regardless of the CJC. So there was a clear roadmap, the REDP building on the Swansea Bay City deal. That's not to, I mean that with the greatest of respect, so it's not to diminish your roles any bit, but I just needed to make that clear. And as you say, there are a number of senior officers here as well as yourselves. So I think that was a valid point that I'm just reinforcing. And the other point in the report is we're currently reliant on Earth funding support. So that's European funding for some regional capacity. It's quite modest, but that does come to an end in the next few months. And we don't have any regional capacity for the delivery of this economic well-being function. So it is reliant on the regional directors group, the regional leads, and the format that has been delivering locally and regionally over a number of years. So just a quick run through, and just to give you an oversight of the detail that's in the report and the appendix documents. Welcome, Val. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jason. That was very helpful. Questions? I'll go around like I've done previously. Councillor Black.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just on the Shared Prosperity Fund, really, I'm just trying to understand the mechanics between how we draw that down, what match funding is involved in it, and what sort of timescale is involved.
Thank you, Councillor Black. So the funding has been allocated, so locally and regionally. So local investment plans fed into a regional investment plan. Swansea City Council is the lead authority for the region, submitted the investment plan, that's been endorsed. So that money effectively, that unlocked the money. So the money's available. The 4 authorities will then be allocating on a local basis, because it's a regional and local allocation. And the intention is that the anchor projects will go out to call on the 1st of March, so next week. So that there will be, each authority is dealing with it in a slightly different way, but under the same themes. But there will then be the call for projects and proposals opening up next week. But the funding is secured and there's no match funding.
Right, okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. If there aren't any other questions from anyone else, Jason, I had a question. Page 94 of the report. I think it's 94. Bear with me. Yeah. In the Earth programme, it talks about the transport and the hydrogen feasibility study, an electric vehicle infrastructure study. I was just curious. I mean, it says that it will be the final report will be available in April 2023, but I'm just curious why a hydrogen feasibility study was commissioned as opposed to electric vehicles, which would have made more sense to me. So if you could help me with that, please, Jason.
I'm going to ask one of my transport colleagues who are on the call as well.
Okay,
Darren
thank you, Jason.
Stewart, are you able to?
Good afternoon, colleagues. Sorry, it's Darren Thomas here from Pembrokeshire. I hope you can hear me. I'm having a few IT difficulties. So with regards, thank you. With regards to hydrogen, certainly from more rural counties perspective in Pembrokeshire, we are finding difficulties with regards to finding electric vehicles on the larger side, on the freighter side, and on some of our bus routes in terms of range that will deal with the requirements. And we feel at the moment that hydrogen still has a role for that in some of those applications, and hence it being included in the study work. Also in Southwest Wales, obviously there's a lot of work going on in our area, in Pembrokeshire in particular. I'm sure the other authorities can comment in terms of the hydrogen economy and the potential for offshore wind and then converting that into hydrogen so that we can use it for storing energy. So there seems to be really good synergy between what's developing on the hydrogen side in terms of production and some of the transport applications. And that's why it's included in the study work, Chair. Hope that helps. Thank you.
Thank you, Darren. I look forward to seeing the final report in April when it's available. Councillor Black, you have a question?
Yeah, just to follow up to that, really. I mean, my understanding was there's actually quite a lot of work going in developing hydrogen vehicles, which are possibly more environmentally friendly than the electric versions. So I'm just wondering, is this part of that sort of progress, given that I think hydrogen will most probably end up superseding electric at some time in the medium term?
I think it's sorry, if Chair, if I could come in, just
please
on that.
Come in. Yeah, that's fine. Thank you, Stuart.
Yeah, it's very much, I think, viewed that it'll be a mixed economy. Certainly, as Dan indicated, it'll be the larger vehicles are the ones that are struggling most at the moment in terms of seeing the application for the range and for the type of functions from an electric perspective. I suppose it's not exactly going to be the VHS Betamax sort of approach, but it won't be one or the other. But I suspect it will be one where there'll be a kind of a mixed economy depending on the application, and as you say, longer term, which turns out to be the most sort of sustainable, long-lasting, and things. I think it'll be a mix. So.
Yeah,
thank you. I find it fascinating because there's obviously there are established e-charging points, and we're beginning to get something like a respectable network, even in some of the more rural areas of our county for electric. But I'm not aware of similar hydrogen networks at this stage.
Electric feels very much like Betamax to me at the moment.
I think there's the sort of approaches with Transport for Wales are very keen, Welsh Government very keen to get the hydrogen bus trials and things rolled out, which there'll be more coming through with that link to the metro. So it's almost at what point the hydrogen supply, you set the hydrogen supply to enable the demand, and when the vehicles are sort of a kind of more mass production stage to enable it. So I guess they're there a lot more with the electric vehicles, but it will kind of follow on as the demand grows from a hydrogen perspective. So it is that difficult thing of getting the timing right and the technology and the development. So.
suppose there's a certain amount of chicken and egg as well with that too. Thank you, Stuart. There's a few hands come back up. I'll go around. Darren, did you want to come back in?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, again, sorry, Pembrokeshire example, I do apologise, but down in Milford Haven, where we've been having one of the projects going on down there, we do have a hydrogen refueler, and we have been trialling some hydrogen vehicles. Yes, it is small scale at the moment, but it was meant to be a kind of pathfinder trial project to see how these things worked. We've also been doing a lot of work with different energy companies like RWE, Statkraft, and they are very interested in large-scale production, more in terms of electricity production and other applications. But they've been very keen to make sure that there is a transport overlap as well in that, and they've been very keen to involve us in their plans. From the TfW side, they've been working with us on a very early stage on a hydrogen bus project. And I had understood that in Swansea, TfW have had more advanced discussions on a site for refueling hydrogen buses there. So, you know, there's a lot of work going on, and there are a lot of issues around how do you fuel a hydrogen bus, where is it stored, you know, and we're beginning to work through some of those applications now. So it is not as advanced as electric, as Stuart was saying, but it's really coming up fast now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Darren. That's very helpful. David Griffiths, you've had your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. My colleagues have covered most of the points there, but I think the most important thing going forward for the Corporate Joint Committee will be the work around securing a hydrogen serviceable network, so that we're not transporting hydrogen to locations. Now, in England, in the Bristol region, where they've got the major conurbation associated with, I think it's the Western Gateway. They are doing a lot of work with the hydrogen companies that Darren referred to there, to develop their hydrogen network, and are actually at a point of securing contracts to deliver that hydrogen network in the next 5 years. So I think that's going to be a critical factor for us as a region, ensuring that we've got that right infrastructure in place. And I think the energy work stream or group, which is part of the CJC, will also be picking up that work stream to take that through the next steps. Thank you, Chair.
Great. Thank you very much, David. Thank you for that contribution. Councillor John.
Thank you, Chair. And it's been very interesting this afternoon. A lot of information in the report, first of all, which I'm sure everybody went through. A lot of information in there, and the information on hydrogen this afternoon. It's again very interesting, and it goes back, I think, though, and it was said earlier on in the meeting on the last agenda item, a lot of this stuff has been going on for years and years, in collaboration between the various councils and the Swansea Bay City region. It's a lot of cross-border working, if I can put it that way, and we're a scrutiny committee, I suppose. So whilst it's great to have all this information, know it's there, I'm just looking to ask a question, really, and what is the purpose really of the CJC and all this? I mean, if I use an example here, where in the report it talks about the UK Shared Prosperity Fund and Levelling Up funds, where the various councils have been applying for money, getting grants and getting on with some of this work, which is all detailed in the report. But going forward with the CJC, is the intention that there's one application as a CJC, and then people got to bid for it internally, or will councils still be able to bid individually, and there mightn't be the sort of joined up approach? I'm just trying to work out, really, in these early days of the committee, what the purpose is. I mean, if all this work is going on anyway, what benefit does having another committee overseeing it? What is the benefit? I mean, I understand the political reasons why the committee might have been set up, but I'm got to ask the questions, being here representing the public and taxpayers' money, as to what's actually being gained for the extra money, which wasn't being developed in the first place anyway. It might be a bit vague the way around of going it, but that's my thought process at the moment. But I like I say, that's in no way criticism of any of the work that's gone on and some of the reports and the office's information this afternoon. It's all fascinating, and I really do thank them for all the work they do to try and bring things forward for the area.
Thank you, Councillor John. Yeah, I think this committee has raised the question previously about what the purpose of the CJC is, and we have got the legal structures that we've had to follow, and in particular last time we discussed that in some detail. But if Craig has any comments he'd like to add in at this stage, then perhaps that might be helpful.
Yeah, just before Craig does, I'm not sort of trying to delay anything or add talk. It's just it's only the second or third meeting we've had of the Scrutiny Committee, and I find myself asking these questions to myself. So I'd rather ask it in public and just have the views of people. It's like I say, in no way taken away from what's happening already. Thanks. Sorry, Chair.
No problem. Thank you, Councillor John. Craig?
Absolutely, and I can very much understand the question. Obviously, you're raising, Councillor John, in that regard, and we work now within the legal confines, obviously, with the type of organisation ultimately that we've been directed in the legislation to ultimately set up. But the questions you ask are obviously quite valid in that sense as well. I think what will be interesting to see as we move forward is when opportunities come up for applications for grant funding, or whether it be any of those types of matters, whether there will be stipulations that will be individual local authorities who make those applications, or whether they're made on the CJC on behalf of other organisations as well. So as things progress and the CJC programme moves forward, we could see, for example, more work coming via the CJC, and we will build on it then at that point. So it is still a unknown quantity, shall we say, at this stage, but obviously something we may see develop more of it as time moves on.
Thank you, Craig. I think hopefully we can all be reassured that we have got, as Jason mentioned in his talk, we've already got some very positive links between the authorities and some very strong working partnerships, which we should all be grateful for in South West Wales. And hopefully we can build on that. Councillor Tierney, you've been very patient. If you'd like to come in.
Thank you very much, Russell, and thanks for the explanations of the economic delivery plan this afternoon. I am disappointed, obviously, that Brexit continues to threaten and jeopardise some of the work that we're doing here. So where that EU funding for the Earth project isn't going to be coming forward in future, how will that shortfall be made up by each of the local authorities, I assume, to make sure that you've got the capacity to do what we need to do in this committee? And then just with regards to the Levelling Up Fund, obviously that seems to be quite key to the economic delivery plan for South West Wales in the report that's come forward. And I know that the report, the region and the local authorities within the region was successful, particularly in the first round, but we weren't very successful in the last round of funding. And it seems as though, from looking at who got money where and for what, that unless you're putting in a bid for about 17 or 20 million pounds, you seem to be overlooked by the UK government in terms of funding going forward. So in places where we put funding applications forward last time round for smaller but strategically important projects, particularly for transport, what sort of collaboration will be required going forward? Because there'll be another grant application period coming soon, and we'll need to be in a position to make sure that we maximise that funding before it's lost somewhere else, maybe less deserving than our cause here in South West Wales. And then finally, just on unpicking the layers within the report, because we're now putting our eggs into the Celtic Freeport bid that will, as we're being told, maximise the work that we've been doing in the Swansea Bay City region. But as things get more complicated, I think we'll need to be on the mark even more so to understand how each of those elements have made the contribution that we were told that they would make when they were proposed first time round. So 3 different strands there. Hopefully somebody might be able to unpick those for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tierney. Yes, I've got 3 clear questions, I think, there. And Jason, I think most of them are for you to answer, please, if that's possible.
Yes, of course, Chair. So thank you very much, Councillor Tierney. So with regard to the earth, as it stands, that there is no replacement funding. That was the point that I was hoping to make. That we will not have that capacity moving forward, and we'll be reliant on existing local authority resources. Is the bottom line. Obviously, as and when opportunities arise, as we always do, individually and collectively, we'll exploit any opportunities that come up. But the bottom line, I'm afraid, is that there is nothing currently to replace earth. But levelling up funding, it's a strange one, if you like, because we're sat here today as a CJC, as a partnership, and the levelling up funding actually puts the all 22 Welsh authorities in competition. So some were successful at round one, some were successful at round two, and that includes within our region. What I would say is that no bid in Wales that had, or no authority in Wales that had a round one successful bid had a successful round two bid. And I'm almost certain the same applies on a UK basis. So I think I'm right in saying that there were 521 awards UK-wide, round two. Not one of those comprised an authority that had a successful round one bid. And if it were the case that if you were successful at round one, you're not going to be successful at round two, it's a shame that that wasn't shared, because a lot of time, effort, money does go into bidding. Yes, we've been assured that there is a round three. What that looks like and what the timing is, I'm not sure. We haven't had that feedback yet, but also it's likely to coincide, or at least the delivery timescale post award, with a general election. Will the political landscape could change. So I'm not necessarily holding my breath on round three, but that is the reality of the two rounds of funding. And then in terms of the Freeport, I know that Stephen Jones, who's more involved with the Freeport director from Pembrokeshire's on the call as well, and may want to chip in. But in terms of the Freeport bit, the key for us regionally is making sure that the skills are available and the supply chain across the region. For me in Carmarthenshire, it's making sure that our businesses, our labour force can benefit from that. So it's joining it up regionally, but I'm sure Stephen will come in and give a more detailed response, if that's okay, Chair. Sorry to put you on the spot, Stephen, but I know you'll respond to this, no problems.
Thanks, Jason. Glad you dropped Stephen in it and not me, so that's fine.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. In terms of measuring the impact of the contribution that the Freeport makes, there is that key point that I think Jason's alluding to around displacement, a key concern. I think that in the past, enterprise zones, Freeports, and we've had them before, of course, have been criticised because, in essence, they haven't necessarily added new economic activity and investment. They've simply moved it around the country depending on where the particular grant or fiscal benefits are being promoted. So in this round of Freeports, and I haven't been involved in any previous rounds, there is a very clear requirement to demonstrate that the Freeport activity does not displace other investment and economic activity in the region, to the extent that for the tax sites, there's an agreement that has to be signed, I think, to identify that investment would not have taken place had it not been for the benefits that the Freeport offered on that site, and that there is no subsequent or consequent displacement. Now, these things are all fine in day one, I guess, but we have to be realistic. The Freeport is, and if we're successful, we don't know if we will be, but it's a 25-year long program a commitment. And in my experience, and I'm sure colleagues will bear this out, I can't think of another government economic initiative that's lasted more than 10 years or so in the past, be that development corporations or enterprise zones or economic partnerships or regional development agencies. In my experience of local government, national government, economic development activity, most programs last between 5 and 10 years, so it would be difficult, I think, to project out over that full 25-year period. But there will, I'm sure, be a requirement for the enterprise, for the free ports, to submit monitoring and evaluation data, as we do, of course, through the Swansea Bay City deal. And if that is an example of the model that free ports will adopt, and I don't know if it is, but the Swansea Bay City deal, which we're more familiar with, clearly has a significant number of metrics that it has to report back on in terms of jobs, in terms of investment induced, in terms of skills, etc., community benefits. So whilst I can't comment directly on the measures in the Freeport submission, I'd be very surprised if there isn't a requirement to provide regular reports on the impact, and particularly on that displacement issue. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Stephen. Darren, you've been very patient there with your hand raised. Is that still a hand there from you?
Yeah, if I could come in quickly, Chair. I was going to just quickly add a comment to Councillor John's point, but on Councillor Tierney's point, and it's mostly obviously aimed at economic side of things, but in terms of joint working on grant work, we do on the transport side submit a joint bid, for example, for the Swansea Bay Metro. So there is already examples of joint working on that sort of grant side, albeit maybe arguably relatively limited. But I'm also thinking on the energy side, just to expand the thinking a bit, because I'm involved on that, officers on the energy side have also been collaborating on strategies and approaches and bids. So there is some degree of that wider working. And with regard to Councillor John's queries, I appreciate, I think he was making obviously more of a political insight and comments, and it's not for me to comment on that. But an observation I would make is that transport, and I'm thinking about transport, sorry, it is cutting across boundaries. So, for example, rail does not sit alone as a local authority matter. It's got to be dealt with more regionally. And the same with strategic road network, for things like the east-west links and freight movements. And also similar with energy, it's such a big issue, it has to be tackled on a bigger basis. So I'm not trying to cut across you, Councillor John, but there's some issues that naturally lend themselves to that wider thinking, because we just can't do it alone as a local authority in some of those examples. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Darren. I think it's interesting. I think Councillor Tierney's point about Brexit and which comments from Jason as well. I mean, we certainly seem to be in an era now where all funding that's coming from central government is very specifically orientated towards a project or a grant, isn't it? And and it's probably pretty clear to me that there's not the same level of funding that we used to enjoy when we were members of the EU, but that's a political point, not one for this. Right, I think that was very helpful. Oh, Jason, sorry, I was just about to move on.
Sorry, Chair, not wishing to unduly delay. The only point I'd make, I don't disagree with any of your points there, but members should be aware that the UK government funding is much more flexible and relaxed than the previous EU funding. So whilst it may be lesser sums, the fact that it can be flexed and best use made of it rather than square pegs in round holes is refreshing. Now, I'm not saying one outbalances the other for a minute, but there are advantages with the UK government regime. For example, the grant conditions don't specify X, Y, and Z. It's a memorandum of understanding, and all of us delivering projects would vouch for that flexibility. Just a point to add.
I think that's a very valid point. Thank you for making it, Ashley. That's a very useful point, and I think we've already started to see that, haven't we? So thank you very much. I think that was a very useful discussion on the economic delivery plan. So unless there's anything else, Charlotte, I'm going to move on to item 7.
Yes, Chair, because that item is for noting, so you can move forward.
Thank you. So now I'm delighted that we've got Mark Wade who will provide an overview to the report. I'm going to hand over to Mark and then I'll accept questions from members.
Mark's actually on leave this week, so he's
didn't plan that very well.
Given me the pleasure of attending. But I chair the Regional Transport Directors Group, but fortunately, it's safety and numbers issue. So I've got Dave Griffiths from Neath, Talbot, and Darren, obviously from Pembrokeshire, joining along as well, just to cover the issue on the regional transport plan. So thank you, Chair. I won't do this through the medium of Welsh. With my North Walian Welsh, I think it'll be horrific for the translator to try and work that one out. And but no, thank you. I'll just go through the main points or some of the key points on the report. If that's okay, on the assumption everyone's had an opportunity to have a look in advance. So really, in terms of earlier on this year, the CJC sort of looked at the various duties and responsibilities coming through with the priority actions, and in terms of transport, the key things were to sort of comment on the draft regional transport guidance, which has come through, to create a sort of regional transport plan delivery programme, which can identify the resources needed and I guess a delivery programme that's achievable for that, and then work with the Welsh Government on the resourcing and the sort of feeding back on those timelines, and to work with the Welsh Government and Transport for Wales and the other key stakeholders to, I guess, progress and to identify and progress the sort of regional transport key priorities. So in terms of the guidance which came through, the requirement in terms of as part of the draft guidance, which we're to comment on, is that we submit back to Welsh Government in August 2024, covering sort of the introduction, which gives all the background, the legal duties, the statutory duties which are covered in it, the links to all the key transport strategies and the overarching strategies feeding down from that. So the Wales Transport Strategy, how that fits in with the National Transport Delivery Plan, the plan period coverage, and all the statutory checks, land use policies, everything associated with that, and the tie-ins. Also covering the approval process, which the role of Welsh ministers, and then the assessment of the transport plans and the timetables, and then all the data and the information behind that. So quite a lot to try and achieve, certainly, as we're having a look at it initially. So I think the sort of key matters that we need a greater understanding of from a CJC perspective is the first issue is the sort of governance, really. So it's sort of it's how much of this is a top-down approach of what goes into the RTP. So obviously there's the Welsh Government policies in place and how they want those to be reflected through the regional transport plans, the Llwybr Newydd, number of different elements, other elements, the statutory duties coming in, what sort of bureaucracy and things come in. There's been a suggestion of I guess a Burn-style commission to be set up. But this potentially introduce yet another sort of level of bureaucracy. So I think there's, and we've also got to consider with the government about how we want to reflect our own needs from the region as part of this. So it's having I guess the appropriate level of freedom so that we're able to express maybe stronger, possibly something relating to the economic ambitions. So how that reflects. The next key issue is the timescale for delivery. So we've got there's a lot of work to be done in terms of delivering this. So I guess what we're doing at the moment from a transport officer's perspective is sort of digesting what the requirements are, and then seeing whether we feel that the timescales are appropriate in terms of the delivery. There seems to be a lot of kind of front-end loading of the work involved. So we need to assess that and feedback. And then the resources for the delivery. So at the moment, there seems to be very little firm commitment from Welsh Government. Clearly, there's a duty. There's a requirement on the authorities to form the CJCs, and they've placed a duty on the CJCs to develop the regional transport plan. but there isn't a sort of a pot of funding which has been identified and promised with it at the moment. So we need to, we've had an indicative, well, we've got some idea of the sort of level of resources that might be required, but we certainly haven't been given the that level of resources through. So there's a significant challenge there. It's a very big piece of work, and there's a resource cost in terms of for that time and resource cost. So we need to work through that. And we need to feed back in terms of the regional transport plan guidance. So that's the key objectives, I think, in terms of on there. So really, just touching on the recommendations in the report is that purpose was so that to give members an update on the progress for developing a regional transport plan. Members note that the further draft guidance will be examined. There's more work to go through. And the sort of outline comments finalised in response to Welsh Government. Members note that the transport subgroup to the CJC will be initiated, as was discussed by in the previous presentations. We've got a long history of sort of regional working. We had the switch agreement before, which was the formally constituted body, and when that got dissolved, we continued to work in a regional transport sort of forum basis. So that's continued on. That will then morph into being the subcommittee. So that will set into place as the subgroup for the CJC, and that members are aware to note the sort of resourcing requirements which are currently unfunded. And with that, there's been a kind of a mention from Welsh Government aspiration to work with Transport for Wales, and that they may be able to assist, but we haven't been given any sort of concrete indication of the type of resources or funding which would be provided through them. So that's something that we need to feed back. And the final point is that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee is provided with a sort of an annual report in terms of the progress being made on developing a regional transport plan. So yeah, those are the key points. And I guess the final thing is, as was mentioned before, it's very much this is not done in isolation. It's a key part of our overall economic strategy, and it's a vital component. So yeah, a big piece of work. So thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Stuart. Yeah, I can certainly see that it's a very big piece of work. It's also very early stages, isn't it, in terms of where you are with it. Before I go to questions from members, can I just say you mentioned that you have an idea of the resources you need. Could you give us a figure on that, or is it too vague at this stage?
The initial sort of view before the guidance came out, we were basing it, I guess, on the development of the previous regional transport plan, which is some years ago, but it was sort of just below about 400,000, about 380,000, something like that, in terms of having a full-time officers, a couple of full-time officers, plus the kind of consultancy support and things to develop that. Obviously, it's not. We can't give a pinpoint figure because we're still working through the guidance, but there's a lot of work involved with some of the assessment and consultation work. That's a huge piece of work, let alone the interpretation. So it's a significant piece of work, really.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful, actually. It gives us an idea. Appreciate that, Stuart. Thank you. Councillor Black, you've got a question?
Yeah, so is that £400,000 in 1 year or each year over a number of years?
No, that's for the duration of the sort of plan. So it's sort of a couple of years, really, right. that kind of period. So to get the resourcing in place. But as I say, it's a bit reluctant to commit exactly to that figure, but that's sort of an indicative figure.
Yeah, thanks, Stuart. Just looking at the section resources management and delivery, it looks a bit of a mess from the Welsh Government's point of view, to be honest. I mean, they're not committing any resources. There's no commitment to provide you with funding to actually develop the plan, and there seems to be there's no coherent plan or programme on what Transport for Wales will provide. And then, of course, we then had a couple of days ago the Deputy Minister for Transport saying there's no money and that's why we're cutting back all these road programs. I'm just wondering, do you feel like you're doing all this work and you're just going to get nowhere at the end of it?
I think I will bring David in a bit, but yeah, I need to be careful what I say here. But no, I think you know, there is this challenge, and the previous regional transport plan that was produced, it was very much, I think at that stage, it's back in 2010, but it was the steer was to be aspirational, to kind of, you know, really try and put things down. So there was a very aspirational plan came along with lots of, I guess, a delivery program on the back of that. And then I think was straight when the plan was announced, the levels of funding which were then available for years ahead were very limited. So so yeah, it is one where, without that indication of the kind of magnitude of funding, it's difficult. You know, we can set the I guess the policy framework there, but to deliver it feels a bit I'm trying to think of the right word. It feels a bit sort of wrong to produce a kind of, yes, a program of delivery for what's going to transform transport and support economic activity and the modal shift and everything if we don't actually know sort of how much funding is going to be there. So it's a challenge. But Dave, I know Dave's sort of
just before Dave comes in, we've been talking about the South Wales Metro for a number of years now. I mean, what's that going to be? £1 billion, £500 million to deliver? I mean, that is the aspiration. I'm just wondering, how realistic is that?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Dave, did you want to come in there?
Yeah. Yeah, just to pick up on Stuart's point, really, and around the financing, there are still discussions going on with Welsh Government, and I know Karen Jones, as the lead chief executive this year, is continuing to have discussions around the funding of the development of the plan. Stuart also alluded to the 2010 transport plan, that was 2010 to 2015, and Stuart referred to the request by Welsh Government for the regions to be ambitious, which we were at that time, but then to find that the budgets weren't available. And, you know, wind the clock on to 2015 to 2020, they disbanded the switch, as it was known then, and Welsh Government are now saying they're not prepared to fund the development of the plan, whereas previously they had provided funding to develop the plan. So I think there's been some sort of short memories within Welsh Government in terms of how that plan was resourced in the past. So we're going to continue to lobby for that funding. It is a huge piece of work, and the expertise within the transport colleagues across the region is diminishing as well. We've lost a lot of very experienced staff, some to Transport for Wales, and some have naturally retired from our organisations. So we are struggling in terms of skills, capacity, and resource as well. So it's a huge challenge for us. And I think you're absolutely right in terms of the ambition. It's a multi-million-pound metro. The road scheme has just changed. There's huge pressures on the budget, and I am sceptical in terms of what we will be actually able to deliver as a region in terms of our infrastructure. So, and then there's huge amounts of money being put towards the very topical and 20 mile per hour changes across Wales. That's coming at many millions of pounds. And then the latest news about the bus infrastructure and emergency funding, which could potentially end, and that's going to have a huge impact if Welsh Government aren't able to change their investment priorities, because that for sure will affect every one of us and every local authority. So there are some fundamental things about the funding to enable us to deliver the regional ambitions around transport. But just to reassure members, we will be continuing to lobby for that additional funding, and we will report back to the Corporate Joint Committee the outcome of those negotiations. Thank you, Stu, and thank you, Chair.
Thank you, David. Very helpful comments. Darren, you were next.
Thank you, Chair. 2 points. First of all, it's worth the committee bearing in mind, obviously, that the current local transport plans are out of date. They expired in 2020. So, you know, we're in a position, even as local councils, that we don't have a current transport strategy to base our delivery plans on, notwithstanding the discussion about funding. So we really need to be in a position to be considering and developing transport plans, strategic plans anyway. So that's something to consider maybe. And then Councillor Black's point about South West Wales Metro. Yeah, funding is a big ask, and we've discussed that. But just a comment, really, there are many strands to the Metro, which I'm sure you're aware of. And if you think about the rail side, obviously you've got the urban metro side of it, which I think is what most people associate with a metro. But there's also the backbone side of it in terms of the cross-region connectivity. And that's maybe where there's potential opportunity in the shorter term. We know that GW are bringing more services to Carmarthen in their summer timetable, from the start of their summer timetable. GW are potentially going to expand Pembrokeshire, we hope. They're certainly bringing back the summer Saturday trains to the south coast. And we know we got Grand Union interested in coming to West Wales. So, okay, some of those are not directly linked to the strategic development of the Metro, but you know, it sort of helps to be talking about some of these things in a more strategic view when you're trying to talk with people like GWR and Grand Union with the investments they have to make in some of their train stuff. So it's just some thoughts. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Darren. It's very interesting, very useful comments. And I think, if anything, it highlights the importance of the CJC being functional and ready to apply for grants and funding when Welsh Government make it available for us. There's been a pattern there of comments from Dave and Stuart reflecting that, you know, we're waiting for Welsh Government. I think maybe we're just ahead of the game in terms of being ready to apply for that funding that hopefully will be coming through soon. Councillor John, you've got your hand up, sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and another good presentation this afternoon. So thank you, Stuart, David, and Darren. I mean, it's great information again, and to know what's going on out there and the effort being put in, it's great. What I'd ask, and this is for Australia, Chair, I suppose. I mean, we heard now from David about the lobbying going on for funding, which is obviously always goes on in the background, either by the authorities now or this new entity. But from a political point of view, I mean, as I mentioned last time, we're a scrutiny committee, and we got to ask questions of this. And should we, as a scrutiny committee, be feeding back our concerns about being able to deliver this plan based on the lack of funding to support it? It's something which
well, thank you, John.
Yeah, sorry,
carry on. I was just going to say, you carry on.
I think we got a delay or something. Should I carry on?
Yes, please do.
Yeah, I said put aside what people's views are of this. If it's going to work, and everybody will want it to work to ensure our region is the best developed it can be within the sort of economical outlook there. But if it's going to succeed, we've got to have some funding for it. And from a political point of view, perhaps we should be feeding back that we're all behind working for this, but we got to have some sort of support by way of extra funds to deliver it. That was my only point, really. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor John. Yeah, I mean, I think Charlotte mentioned it earlier, in terms of, and from Councillor Black's comments about formally addressing it to the CJC. I mean, I'd be happy to draft a letter to the CJC on behalf of members, outlining the concerns that have been raised in item 5, 6 and 7 today, think there's a pattern, as you've said, Councillor John, which will relate to primarily to funding, but also to the the CJC finding its feet within the regional framework. So, if members were happy to do that, Charlotte, if it's not inappropriate, I'd be happy for me to do that and circulate it.
Yes, Chair, that's not a problem. Obviously, it's up to yourself and the committee. If that's how you'd wish to put your views across to the Corporate Joint Committee, then that's completely within your discretion. So that's absolutely fine.
Okay, thank you, Charlotte. So if members are agreed, then I'd be happy to draft a letter and then circulate it to you to then, once you've fed back, to send it into the CJC. If anyone object to that idea? All in favour of that idea? There we are then. Okay, thank you. I'll draft that and get it to you next week.
Yes, Chair, don't worry, we can discuss it outside the meeting and work out the plans, that's fine.
Wonderful, thank you, Charlotte. Good. So I don't think there's anything else on item 7. So item 8, we've got the forward work programme. This is just for noting, and I don't believe it's changed since we last saw it. So unless there's anything from anyone there, I'll move on to item 9. Item 9 is urgent items. There are no urgent items. So I'd just like to thank everyone for attending today. I'd like to thank officers for their time, their patience, and answers to the questions, which I think has been very useful today. And I think we moved forward actually quite a lot. And I'd like to thank members for their contributions. I look forward to seeing you all soon. And I'll close the meeting. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you.
Diolch yn fawr. Very interesting meeting. I've learned a lot, I'm glad to say.
Thank you
all.
Thank you, Councillor Davis. Thank you, Dave.
Bye-bye.